In June 2024, 6 new guidance documents were issued to help businesses to better comply with their obligations and to understand how to comply with the regulatory changes that took effect on the 31st of July 2023 and the 1st of June 2024, and which will take effect on the 1st of June 2025. In May 2024, a joint statement was published by the 3 sector supervisors regarding their approach to supervision. This joint statement states that they envisage taking a broadly educative approach, and they will be constructive and work with businesses. The focus will be on issuing guidance on expectations when it comes to compliance, and more generally supporting businesses to comply with the new requirements at their earliest opportunity. They then go on to state that they reserve the right to take enforcement action. Now, this joint statement is an example of an important concept in action that's called the implementation timeline. The implementation timeline applies to all legislation and all regulations, including the AML-CFT Act and its many related regulations. The implementation timeline concept helps to explain a regulator's approach to monitoring compliance with legislation and regulation, and also helps to explain the enforcement action that a regulator is likely to take should they identify areas of non-compliance. Let's now take a look at the implementation timeline and what this means in the context of the joint statement. Now, when legislation first comes into force, the regulator responsible for overseeing that legislation is happy. We call them happy face regulator. They want to work with you, support you, help you to understand your requirements of the legislation and how to effectively comply with those obligations. If it's found that you have breached your obligations, the regulator is likely to be understanding, and it's likely that they won't look to take enforcement action against you. If they do take enforcement action, it's likely to be at the lighter end of the enforcement spectrum. The joint statement released by the sector supervisors indicates that at the time of releasing that statement, they were a happy face regulator in respect of the recent regulatory changes. Now, going back to our implementation timeline, over time, the regulator expects you to develop your understanding of your obligations by reading the guidance and the materials that they publish. They expect you to mature your thinking and your frameworks. The regulator moves away from happy face regulator to stone face regulator. Now, stone face regulator is less willing to work with you and less tolerant of non-compliance. The regulator is more likely to take enforcement action if it's found that you have breached your obligations. And that enforcement action is likely to be at the moderate end of the enforcement spectrum. Moving on past stone face regulator, we have grumpy face regulator. This regulator has given you more than enough time to familiarise yourself with your obligations and how to effectively comply with them. This regulator has a zero tolerance approach to non-compliance. It's highly likely that the regulator will take enforcement action if it's found that you have breached your obligations, and that enforcement action will likely be severe. It's been 19 months since the first set of regulatory changes took effect, 9 months since the second. It's been approximately 11 months since the new CDD guidelines were issued, and it has been 5 months since the AML-CFT program guideline was issued. In respect of your existing obligations that haven't changed by the recent regulatory reforms, the length and the complexity of the guidelines that are being issued indicates that the supervisors are expecting you to have matured and continue to mature your thinking and your frameworks. For example, the previous AML-CFT program guideline was 20 pages. The new AML CFT program guideline is 52 pages. There have also been 126 pages of guidance issued in the past 7 months alone. Now we've put on the implementation timeline where we think the sector supervisors are in terms of their view towards non-compliance in respect of the recent regulatory changes and also your existing obligations. If you haven't taken steps to comply with the new regulations and the new guidance, we strongly recommend that you do, because the supervisor's view will only become less tolerant to non-compliance as time goes on. If you aren't confident that you're complying with your existing obligations, well, as shown on the implementation timeline, it's likely that you're going to be dealing with grumpy-faced regulator.